All right, hi guys. So I want to start with a question. What do you guys think is time and time again our most popular messages that we post online? Any certain topic or subject? What's the most popular?
Testimonies.
Absolutely right.
Ding, ding, ding. Testimony.
Testimonies. Right away. There is a little bit of a dominance in the Smith world too, but I think it has to do with testimonies because but when a Smith gets up here, people tend to want to watch it. But just putting that out there. But it's testimonies. When you go through all of our videos, the videos that start off testimony and then whatever it is afterwards get literally at least 3 times the views than any other video. Is that kind of interesting? Why do you think that is? Any comments?
You want to just keep it in your desk?
Because people like to hear people's stories and personalize it, just like documentaries and all that stuff.
Because we connect to it,
Yeah.
right? One of the things that Phil taught me early on that I found to be really effective when ministering to other people is giving my testimony about whatever the thing is that I'm trying to help them with. Or even think about the last couple weeks. Tell me some of the most powerful moments that you've had in listening to messages, and weren't they stories? I mean, how incredible is it when you hear, say, Phil share a story? I remember just recently he shared the story about the interaction that he had when he was at the funeral. It's really powerful, right? You end up remembering it because it touches something inside of your heart. It gets you to this place where it pulls you out of the intellect and the thinking and the figuring things out and the conceptual, and it makes it personal, doesn't it? So one of the things that he taught me to do when going and helping other people is to be able to share my story, and it's always really powerful because it's one thing to sit across from somebody, especially when you have some piercing things that the Lord tells you to say. But when you're able to say, hey, let me tell you a story of how I really messed up here. Let me tell you a story of how I used to struggle with this thing. Or some of the things that helped me to work through what you're working through right now. It's so helpful because it puts you in this position then where you become relatable. And there's also a humbling factor to it as well. Isn't there hey, I'm not sitting here acting like I'm perfect and have just arrived and now let's just spout out a bunch of concepts to you and you just need to start doing this so you can be perfect like I'm perfect. It's real. It's authentic. Because none of us have arrived yet. We haven't gotten to this place where all of a sudden we've just totally mastered our sin nature, right? So to hear a story can be really inspiring, becomes personal. It gives you something to connect with. It's the reason that we have a love feast that we do every single week. It's not about a concept, it's about a testimony. And what are some of the most powerful love feasts? When someone really gives a vulnerable testimony. Ever hear someone give a testimony on Thursday nights? And it's almost hard for you to hear because you know how vulnerable it is for that person to share? Ever happened to you before? Has happened many times where I've heard someone and it's like, wow, you know what, that must have been really hard to say. But at the same time, it has this effect where it inspires the room. And it makes you want to look at that story and then start to think about it in terms of your own process. I know that's what it provokes inside of me. When I hear someone share something that's really vulnerable, I don't know, it was really difficult for them to be able to say. It makes me want to find some way that that's true about me. So I can say yeah, me too. Yeah, me too. I almost every single time find myself saying, yeah, we all deal with that, don't we? It brings us to this place where we're on level ground again, where we're starting to connect the dots in our own process and realizing, wow, you know what? I'm certainly not better than so-and-so. And if they're working on this thing inside of themselves, then I certainly can work on this inside of myself too. It's really powerful. I'm certain that's why those end up being the most popular videos. People are looking for that moment, a moment of authenticity. And I know when I have that moment with other people where I'm trying to help them see something, it's so disarming to be in a place where you're talking to somebody where hey, you know what? Nobody's on top here. We all deal with the same things and we're all working on it, and here's some things that have helped me. And it ends up putting someone in a position of yeah, you know what? If you can do it, I can do it too. I was looking up online, and I don't know how accurate this is, but there's a few different figures that say that 70% of the Bible is narrative, is stories. I don't think that's a coincidence. Look at Jesus. The majority of the things that he said were stories, weren't they? He told parables. He told real life stories. He gave examples. Just about every one of his teachings is he left you in this place where there was this image. And part of the reason that I want to paint a picture of how powerful the story is, because I think we got to understand a little bit of why we do what we do. Why are we set up the way that we're set up? We're certainly not a mega church. And even if we had the people, we don't have the seating. And it makes me wonder a little bit, what would we do if we got too big? Because there's something that's really special about what we do. The fact that we have an event every week that isn't for someone to give a message, but for someone to give a testimony. Multiple people to give a testimony. We have our services on Saturday and Sunday, and I would say probably 50% of the time that we have is spent talking to each other. I mean, if you really like took down a percentage, I'm thinking that's probably pretty accurate. The amount of time that we do discussion compared to the amount of time that you're just receiving a message. There's a lot of dialogue that we have, a lot of engagement. Isn't there? I mean, sometimes it might seem a little silly, but we have our Sundays and we spend sometimes 45 minutes finding out what everybody ate for dinner that we just sat with eating dinner with. Why aren't we changing that? Why aren't we just getting to the point? Yes, there's a part of it in doing sound checks and I mean, even our services, like it's kind of like we start our service, we read something together, do comments. Then we do worship, and then we do comments, and then we do a message, and then we do comments. And that's the way we felt like we were supposed to be set up. That's how we've built our whole organization around. I think some of those times are absolutely precious, even if you're just sharing, I had some mac and cheese and a quarter of a third of a chicken nugget. Not pointing anyone out at all.
I didn't take it back.
But what happens when we do that? It's actually a really special time, isn't it? Yeah, there's sound checks and there's setups that are happening, but there's something that puts us on this personal level ground where it's not just all intellectual, it's relational. And it creates a certain connection. It actually prepares everybody's hearts to be able to receive. You guys realize that? I just want you to see there's mechanics in place that God has given us as an organization that sets things on a certain stage. I remember for a while the mega church was like a really big deal. You know, just mega churches going everywhere, and then they're starting to realize that it's not producing change. Like just because you have a sanctuary and there's 10,000 people sitting in there doesn't mean there's 10,000 people changing. So what started to happen after that? The small group movement. You know, we need to be able to have everybody get together and break off in these separate groups so people can make it personal and create connections and we don't need to go any further with it than that, but you kind of realize there's an incredible value to having that personal story, that connection. I know a lot of times when I'm praying about a message, I try and think what is a personal story I can share? You know, what is something to just make it real for everybody, so it's not just something intellectual that we're working through. See, and that's what the Jews did. I mean, before everybody didn't always have this written scriptures right in front of them. It was like an oral tradition. It was a storytelling culture. You know, they would get together as a family and they would tell different stories from the Bible and then maybe go back and forth and start to share personal ways that story was having an effect on them. I saw this thing online when I was looking at the percentage of stories that was in the Bible, and there's this thing that people do called Bible storying. So like story with a Y-I-N-G. Bible storying. It's a little awkward to say, at least for me. But this is what they do. So they go and they tell a story from the Bible, and then they make every single person in the crowd repeat it. And if there's someone who can't repeat it, they go back and they tell the story again. And then they go back to the people and they tell the story until every single person is on the same page of the story that they just told. And then they go through one more time after that and share, how did that story personally impact you? Isn't that cool? Kind of sounds a little bit like our services to a degree. And that's what we do. We read a prayer, and then we'll have, oh, I like this part. You'll repeat that part in the prayer and then say, this is what I liked about the prayer. And we do so many different comments and ways to make it personal because it helps with retention. And the whole reason that I'm sharing this is because I want to really focus on like engagement. And have a picture in our minds of like, are you looking at the things that we're doing, the things that God has led us to do as a group, and like really engaging with it? Because there's something that happens when we can start sharing a story, when we can start making it a personal experience. It touches you because it's personal. Well, think about our salvation process. Just because you understand something intellectually, does that mean you're actually making the changes? It does not. See, we're going through this journey of experientially having to change. So if it's experiential, it's stories, isn't it? It's testimonies. It's finding a way to connect with the things that we're talking about and making it something personal. Something that you can apply. So we can do a message, and if we just keep it at something intellectual, what percentage do you think you're going to retain it? Like, say we changed our style as a service, and all it was you came here promptly at 7, we did 20 minutes of worship, you heard someone talk for 35 minutes, and then you all went home. What do you think your engagement would be? I think it would be really hard, wouldn't it? It would be much more difficult. I know there's so much value in our counseling that we do because you're sitting with someone who's helping you see how that message, that revelation actually applies to you. How many of you realize that most of the messages you hear are because of someone's process? Is that total? Is that a surprise?
No. That was somebody's appointment.
Where do you think we get the material from? You guys are the material. See, but that's what makes it personal, isn't it? That's what makes it relatable. This might be shocking, to some of you. Wow, this sounds exactly like the appointment I just had. Probably was. Because that's our system. Do you guys see how it's totally different than the way that we've been taught to like engage with material, say going through school or college or learning or studying for something. It's a very different way. We went through one time in the mystical prayer seminar, I'm pretty sure it was mystical prayer, where they talked about there's different systems of learning. So there's the scientific method. You have the, help me out, the scholastic method, and then we talked about the mystical way. And it was so important for us to break through in a sense that we're not coming to conclusions the way a scientist would come to conclusions. We're not coming to conclusions the way a theologian comes to conclusions about things. Because we're realizing that just an intellectual understanding of a certain concept doesn't necessarily mean you're living it out and actually applying it. You could give a 3-hour sermon about the dangers and pitfalls of pride, but that doesn't make you a humble person. Doesn't make you a humble person that you're giving that message, and it doesn't make you a humble person because you heard it. I mean, you guys know this. I just want you to see, though, there's a reason we do things the way we do. So our method has been more mystical because the process of us becoming a new covenant Christian is one that's experiential. Because if we were able to just understand with our mind all the right things and do them, we wouldn't have needed the new covenant in the first place, would we have? There was a list of laws that were very clearly broken down, but people still followed those laws but did them with the wrong motives. So Jesus came, he died on the cross to show us our sinful perception, our self-centeredness, the way we interpret everything in light of how it affects us and how it makes us feel and how it makes us look, and realizing I need to look at this about myself. And just understanding, like conceptually, that I'm a sinner, or just understanding conceptually what it means to, say, follow your conscience or live life by the Spirit, isn't gonna really get you there. What gets you there is you have to have experiential knowledge, which means it has to be something that you've like personally gone through, like a story, a testimony. But what happens if you take this system that God has given us to accomplish that, but we don't use it for that purpose? See, if you hear a message and you're just getting a concept out of it, but you're not getting application of what that looks like for you, it's going to be really difficult for you to get the most out of it, don't you think? That's why I want to talk about engagement. And we often challenge you guys to make it personal, don't we? Like when you raise your hand, how does this personally apply to you? There's a lot of value in just raising your hand and saying, I really liked that you talked about this. I'm not saying we should never do that, but there's even more personal value when you can say, I really liked that you talked about this because I can think of 3 examples this week where I did that. Maybe I was successful, maybe I failed in that area. Why is that helpful? Because you're making it something personal now. You're making it something experiential. That's the way that God's people from the beginning did it. They told stories. And it inspired them to live different lives, ones that like touch something inside of you that you can relate to. I was actually, Phil was telling me this. We were just texting and saw a little skit from Rodney. And he was telling a bunch of jokes. Everybody's heard of Rodney Dangerfield, right? Number one joke in 1,000 different ways. It's about rejection. And he tells all these jokes about how his family didn't care for him, he didn't have friends, his wife didn't love him. You know, he goes through all these different jokes. And you know why we laugh? Because we get it. Because it tickles something inside of you. Because we can think of all the moments that we had where we felt completely rejected. And now here's somebody else who's making a joke out of it, and it's like, yeah, I hear you. And he's using comedy. He's taking something that's a real human experience and blowing it up a little bit, accentuating it a little bit, making it a bit extreme, and it makes us all laugh because we've been there. It's personal. See, a really good comedian finds a way to take human nature, personalize it, and then accentuate certain points that everybody can relate to. Isn't that what happens? See, God's given us this incredible system, but we have to find a way to get to the application part of it, to apply it, because we're trying to be a new covenant Christian, which means that we have all types of perception issues, and we're trying to take on a new spirit, a new attitude, a new outlook on things. So we have to be able to say, wow, we talked about pride today. Are there some ways, Lord, that maybe I can see this about myself? Maybe there isn't anything, but sometimes, you know what I think we do? Say we hear a message about pride. Sometimes I think, oh, you know what? I can't think of any examples in the last hour, so I don't have anything to share. Share something from last week. Share something from 10 years ago. You know why? Because it'll make it personal for you. It'll remind you who you are and the things that you're working on, even if you weren't a proud person in the last hour, which is unlikely that we can't find something. But even if you were humble in the last hour and you can't think of a single example, do you think it would serve you to find an example that you were? To find a way to engage with what's being said so that you can connect with it? That's our system. That's why we make counseling available, so you can have someone help you apply it. That's why we do testimonies at Love Feast, so you can hear application. It's why we take so much time to do comments. I mean, do you realize it's not just some sort of routine we've fallen ourselves into? It's not like, oh, we just take comments because we always take comments, and that's just what we do, and we need to like fill up the time. It's part of the service. I would go as far as saying the more important part of the service. A lot of Jesus' stories that he would tell, he would finish them afterwards and he'd say, those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. Like, who was listening? Who was really engaging with the things that he was talking about? Were they taking it in? Were they personalizing it? Because it takes a certain level of attention. We're used to just watching a movie that there isn't a question and answer afterwards. That's just entertainment. We're used to our minds going a million miles an hour and not really being able to focus. To have that discipline to like really engage, to listen. It's such a huge part of what we do. How effective do you think an AA meeting would be? If they just went around the room and just said, you know what, alcohol's bad. Or even gave a bunch of figures. Alcohol causes this. Alcohol causes this. But what if they always kept it abstract? It was always just a concept. Every single week they went around the room and it was just, this many accidents happen because of drunk driving. It would have an effect, wouldn't it? I can hear a couple comments. Like, what do you think that would do? What kind of effect do you think that would have? Anybody? Can someone pass the mic over?
The word when it comes to me is, I don't know if it makes sense, but it will be dull. It will be like everybody will like fall asleep. I mean, I can hear.
I've heard these facts all before.
Yeah, it doesn't produce any change, and I know it myself. I will totally shut down. Probably I will go, but it just, well, I know there's the same tape over and over and over. I know I will not put attention at all.
Yeah. So how is that any different here? They have a really effective system that they've put in place that helps people step out of denial and be something different. How is that? Can you pass the mic back to him?
The difference then we talk about our personal problems and we express what we are dealing with and how Jesus help us to overcome and give examples of our own life and the things that we are going through, the struggles that we have. And that help us to relate to each other and to listen and learn from each other, because we're not trying to teach something from intellectual, I know what I'm talking, we teach something from what we went through. And I think that is what makes us tick.
Right. So I think we got to remember like why we do things the way we do them. And how's your engagement? I'll bet you it would be an extremely effective exercise if right now we went around the room and I asked every one of you to summarize everything that we said so far. You think that would be effective? And then what if, just like this Bible storying, what if then we went around the room and had everybody share what about that touched you today? You think that would get you like a little focused? What if you knew we did that every single service? that at a certain point in time, you're going to be called on and you're going to be asked to repeat every single thing that was said. And we're going to keep doing it until you get it right. You think that would change the dynamic a little bit? I'll bet you even if we had to make the messages a third shorter to make time for that, there was a third less material, the engagement would be higher. Because at least what was said was retained. It was taken in. I just want you to think about that for a second. How much do you think is missed? How much goes over your head, or how much do you think maybe you're limiting yourself in how much you can receive when we get together because you're not engaging in the way that you could? Compared to if we went around the room and everybody gave a summary until we got it right. Is here a couple more comments about that? Oh, can you pass the mic, Lauren?
It kind of reminds me of the Sunday teaching about like active listening.
Mm-hmm.
Remember he was talking
Yeah.
about like a lot of times we think listening is just like sit there and be quiet and just stare at them and like a lot of times it doesn't make the person who's talking feel like you're actually listening because you're just sitting there and it's like you don't even know if they like heard you or if they care or what they think about it. And so it reminds me of that message when they were talking about like respond, like connect somehow, like find some way, or just like also when Phil always says like try to see how what they're saying is true. It's harder a lot of times to do that because you can just listen, but if you try to see how what they're saying is true, it requires a lot more effort, a lot more like you're putting more energy into it, you're putting more of yourself into it.
Right.
And then but then you're connecting in the good spirit of Holy Spirit of what he's trying to say. So.
Right, and to connect that way, and then oh, they probably didn't hear that. You got to flip the switch up when you get it. But to go through that process, it actually takes a lot of focus. It exposes, I think, a little bit of some slothfulness that we have, where it's so hard for us to just engage with something because we don't live in a culture where we're telling stories to each other all the time. We live in a very fragmented social media, immediate gratification culture. So the world is so far lost inside of themselves that to have to listen to what somebody's saying, focus on it, engage, find something to say, not think about what everybody else is going to think of you because you're saying it. You actually have to pop outside of yourself. Right? See, but it's easy. It's easy just to sit in a chair and be present, but not focused. Be physically in the chair, but not engaged. And if we're not disciplining ourselves to engage that way, to look at like our organization and why we do things the way that we do them, then we're not taking advantage of it. Unless the Lord tells me otherwise, I don't want to turn our services into this Bible storying system. I think it could be really helpful, but I'd have to hear that we were supposed to do something differently, because there's a component to it where each person has to decide for themselves. Like, what are you here for? Like, what are you really looking to get out of this time? Is it just a routine to come and sit in the chair? Or is it to focus, to engage? You realize that it's a discipline just like anything else. So he walked in when we were doing worship and said, 6 weeks to build a habit. I don't know about you, but I did not feel a whole lot of inspiration in the room to move around and be active. And I don't know, I wasn't in the room for the worship part of it, but I don't know who really fully engaged and who didn't, and that's on you. Maybe you all did, maybe you didn't, but when we started, I felt more of a hostility coming towards me of, why are you saying this, and having, asking people to respond. Like, just acknowledge I said something. Then I did enthusiasm, everyone lifting their hands, ready to start pacing back and forth, dancing, and really engaging with what we're doing. You tell me where you were, when you came in, but it's a habit. And we're in the habit of checking out. That's the culture that we live in. That's the instant gratification, and this like dark hole of like just being stuck inside of yourself has become a really comfortable place to live in. To the point that, remember, like I was talking on Thursday, like that movie, like this guy has so many different thoughts going inside of his head that somebody's talking to him right now. And like it's not occurring to him. Like, it's respectful to answer back. Even if it's, I don't want to answer your question, but at least acknowledge them. At least step outside of that hibernation in your soul for a moment to acknowledge that there's a human being standing in front of you. We just get so comfortable, like being checked out, being disengaged. But God's Spirit is one of clarity. It's one of sound mind. It's one of like engaging with Him and getting lost in Him and just thinking, oh my gosh, you know what, that thing we just talked about? Lord, I think you were talking to me. Is there something that you want to share? Is there some revelation that you want to give me? And then if there's somebody who's engaging in that way, and then maybe they get a personal story that they can share, and then it starts to provoke other people to say, wow, I did that same thing this week. It can turn into this really powerful moment that we can have together as a community because it's personal. Because we all know how to connect to a story, to engage. And that's something that doesn't happen immediately, just like getting physically strong. But it is something that we're all capable of. to just engage. Because I would imagine there's quite a few times where we just want to like check out. Sometimes the feelings get so strong. There was a moment this week where things got so intense spiritually. I could feel myself like wanting to just like just check out. Because it was just like too much to deal with. You know, it was like too intense, and I had to like purpose myself of just say, you know what? No, I'm going to go and do something dynamic. I'm going to do something that is what are the 3 Ds? Deliberate, dynamic, and decisive. Is that what it is? And it was because it was just like too intense almost. And sometimes you might be drowning so much in your own feelings that to like do a service and have to actually focus, listen to what someone else is saying, and find a way to apply it is just too much. Because the heaviness, the self-absorbency is just too overpowering. I need to just run away. I need to just like go to La La Land and just like disconnect for a while because it's just too much. And in those moments, you know, there's tools that we have. Some of you guys take notes to not go to that place. Some of you guys may get up. You know, I've seen you in different services where it's like, okay, you know what, I'm starting to check out and this comfortable seat just isn't doing it for me. You know, if I'm going to get anything out of what's going on right now, I need to stand up. I need to move around a little bit. I need to be dynamic. I need to be decisive. I need to be deliberate. And if I just sat there like in the chair while I was just feeling some of these overwhelming things, I wouldn't be in a really good place right now. Just as you're not in a really good place when you don't take action and do something about it. It's a discipline of engagement. Using the tools that we have in our services is one of them. Taking notes is a big deal. Finding something to say. Something to talk about. I've heard people say things I don't normally give comments. Remember last Sunday I talked about we're going to swap rows. Back row's moving up front row's moving in back. Maybe you need to sit in the front row because that's what it takes to help you engage. See, our services are set up to give you the greatest ability to apply. Because if it's not experiential, it's not going to have the same effect. Just going through the statistics of the dangers of alcohol, it would be helpful. It's not that people would walk out of the meeting and it just would be of no help whatsoever. But what's life-changing is saying, my name is, I have a problem, and this is how it's true. And those guys who have been sober for 20 years still give a testimony even though they didn't take a drink last week. Because they know I can still fall. So, hey, you know what? Maybe this isn't something I can think of that I've done in the last hour. But it doesn't mean that it wouldn't serve me to find something that I can contribute so I can strengthen that clarity. That's why they keep going to the meetings in and out over and over and over. That's why our services are structured the way they are. but it also puts you in a place where the amount that you get out of what we do is on you. Are you going to use it and engage? And a lot of times it ends up just exposing, like, wow, you know what, I'm just a little bit too into my own world, because like when I'm reading a book and went through 5 pages and couldn't remember one thing I just read, I just listened to a 45-minute message and I can't think of one point that was just said. I can't think of one personal example that would contribute to the things that we're talking about. And the worst of it is that if we're having a hard time engaging, like focusing, making it personal, consulting the Holy Spirit, finding out the things that He wants us to get out of our time together, how often do you think you're doing that when you're not here? How many times do you think you're a bit checked out? Maybe you're just a little too focused on the task at hand, or your circumstances, or your own feelings, or how things are affecting you, or what somebody else is doing, or what they said, or the right and wrong, that you're not focused. Jesus has given us a new spirit, one of a sound mind, a quiet mind, a focused mind, one that we can just engage with Him constantly, but we have to build the skill. I don't want to say skill, the discipline, the muscle of really learning how to engage, to connect with the way God set up our church. It keeps us from being independent. It keeps us from being too far inside of ourselves. But at the end of the day, it's on each one of us to decide how much we're willing to put into it. So there's going to be people who just naturally always find something to say, and people who are less inclined to do so. The ones who find something to say are also going to be the ones who walk away getting something out of it. It's just too easy to disengage. That's our culture. That's the world that we live in. We're not really that good at taking in fresh wind, fresh perspective. And it's even harder to do when it's just intellectual. Because how many times have you personally, I know I've done it 1,000,000 times, how many times have you personally taken a concept that was being taught and you just applied it in your own way, and then you realize that you were really off track? You just used your intellect to do it with. We got to make it personal. We got to find a way not to be so independent. That's why we're set up the way we are. And if you challenged yourself in that way, just like we were doing this 6-week like active worship, it can be a habit. Something that you just naturally are in this process of like engaging with Him. Really focusing on finding out where He is, what He's doing, what He's saying, what's important to Him in that moment. Remembering like, hey, my priority, Jesus died for me. Am I going to remember that? Am I going to take advantage of it? Am I going to realize, hey, that's my sin that was on the cross, and I got to keep looking at it? that just because I looked at it last week doesn't mean that I need to stop looking at it this week. That I can use every moment, I can use every opportunity to be able to remind myself of the things that I'm working on, of who I am, to keep my feet on the ground, to keep myself humble, to keep myself connected to Him. If that's my priority, then we have an unbelievable organization here. We have an incredible amount of opportunities to step outside of ourselves. If we use them, if we focus, if we take advantage of them, if we don't get too far lost into our own thoughts and circumstances and feelings, all it takes is finding something to say, taking a few notes, standing up, finding a way, I don't want to be caught off guard. What if I'm asked to summarize everything? It would create a pressure. I bet you people would engage more if they knew every service. They had to give a summary because we don't like looking foolish in front of each other. But we have to self-impose it because we're each on our own journey, and we got to decide how important it is for us to look at those things. And sometimes we're going to have an off week, and that happens. But if you're dynamic, if you're deliberate, what's the other one? Determined? Decisive? Yeah. You can really pop through. Have an incredible engagement with the Lord. And there's one last thing I want to highlight. There's one more tool. You know what it is? It's confession. That's part of giving a testimony. There's incredible power in confession. When you're in that process and you're trying to engage with God, you're trying to connect with Him, you're trying to grow in your process, confession. Whether that's to somebody that you trust who will give you good, sound spiritual advice, or to do it in a group setting. It doesn't always have to be personal. But it is so powerful when you're able to say, you know what, I just need to confess, I really didn't do that good this week. I just focused too much on worldly things, and I'm glad I'm here because I want to have a more spiritual mind. You think you're going to have a really successful event if you did something like that? Because to confess is to pop out of yourself. It is to step out of what you're dealing with and say, hey, I'm here because I want to grow in my union with Christ, and here's some barriers that were in the way of that. And I just want to confess that out loud. And then what if you came back last week after having a perfect week and said, these were some barriers that were in the way of my union with Christ last week, and I don't remember them. I want to remember them really clearly because I want to have another good week. Would that be bad? Say you just had a perfect week. You did everything right. You followed your conscience in every way. You're totally at peace and you're feeling great. Would it still serve you to raise your hand at a love feast and say, you know what? Thank God. It was actually a pretty good week. But I know I have so much struggles with whatever. And I just want to say that because I need to remind myself how debilitating it is. How bad it is when I get lost in that stuff, and the way I treat people, the things that go through my head, they're pretty terrible. That might actually help you have another good week. We gotta be unafraid to like take advantage and engage. We don't have to have this really sophisticated testimony to share. And if you end up sharing the same thing that you shared the week before, great. If you're sharing it from the bottom of your heart and you're doing it for the reason of reminding yourself to keep your feet on the ground, good for you. No one should judge you for that. Good for you. You came, you engaged, you focused, and you got something out of it because you reminded yourself of some of the things that you needed to remind yourself of. And if you can get really strong at this, it's going to be really hard for you to fall. It's going to be really hard for you to get distracted and get off track because you're developing a discipline inside of yourself to look at the cross. To remind yourself of the things that you're continuing to work out, just like that alcoholic at an AA meeting. You're not just sharing facts, sharing concepts that you thought were good, although maybe that's all you need to do. I'm not saying that's a bad thing to do, because sometimes just raising your hand and sharing something that meant something to you is you getting outside of yourself, and if that's great. But we gotta get stronger at having a focused mind. Being quiet, engaging with Jesus everywhere that we go. And we can at the very least do that with each other. Use the different tools that we have to be able to get ourselves there. We can consistently get more connected to Jesus in that way. But it's going to require us to keep looking at the cross. Keep looking at who you were and who you are now. And find a way to give him glory for what he's done in your life. Even if nothing extraordinarily happened in the last hour. You probably could find something, but go back a week. Share the same thing that you said the week before. It's engagement. We have an education system that is largely about learning material, passing a test, forgetting the material, getting a degree, moving on. It's a common joke of you take whatever degree you got in college and think like, well, what am I really using? What do I even remember? That's how we're learned. You know, cram, get the data, stuff it in your head, regurgitate it out, pass the test, move on. That's not the culture that Jesus was born into. Jesus was not born a Roman. He wasn't born a Greek. They were all about philosophy and intellectualism and abstract thinking. He was born a Jew. Storytelling. That's what he did. He told stories. He made it personal and made it real. That's how he taught. So we're kind of missing out if we forget like why our services are the way they are, what the point is. And it's going to be up to everybody else if you don't take advantage of it. I think all of us could do a better job at that. To one degree or another. Like have that attitude of I want to be a little more focused, a little more dynamic, a little more deliberate, determined. I don't even know if that was one of them. I can't remember the last one. You always was decisive. Thank you. Determined's good too, though. But we can get better at that, a little better than we were the day before. We have to switch out of like a Western, linear, intellectual mind and be experiential, and that's why we engage. That's why we don't just come together, listen for 40 minutes, and go home. It's not effective. All right, can I just hear a couple comments? We'll call it a night. Javier?
It made me remember like a few times I'm not saying proud of myself, then that or you finish a message and say I'm gonna take a comment, and I'm like, oops, what he was talking about? Like the whole message went through, and you say like, oh, I'm just gonna take a comment. And I'm like, oh, sometimes you say, can I have a comment of like what happened last week in service, what we talked last week, and many times I'm like, I don't think that I was at the service last week. Oh yeah, I was, but I don't remember.
Yeah.
And that's because I wasn't putting attention. And
because our own personal feelings were so overpowering that like we just couldn't find a way out. And
yeah, in the
I just want to, it's like the image that's coming to my mind of ever in a place like you wake up in the morning, it's winter and it's cold and you're under the warm blanket, and you take that blanket off and it's like you're going to be freezing. And that's just part of the experience of waking up, isn't it? At least in the Midwest during wintertime. And it's the same way where sometimes like we come here and it's like we're wrapped in the blanket and it's like I'm too comfortable here. I don't want to have to come out. It's too much work to like come out of my blanket right now. I'm going to have to like stop thinking about my feelings. I'm going to have to like step outside. It might be vulnerable, might be uncomfortable, might get cold. It's like that feeling, and we want to be able to just like, let me just sneak into my chair, and I'm gonna stay here. Let me just stay in my pod that I'm in, and then it's like afterwards, it's like, okay, I got through. Nobody called on me. I didn't have to say anything, and then it's like, oh, how was your day today? And it's like, these people, why are they asking me all these questions about myself? I just wanna eat my meal and go home. Or like you start to get upset. Tell me that hasn't happened to to most people here. It's like you're just too far inside of yourself. It's like, don't talk to me. I don't want to have to answer your questions. You might actually make me come out of my blanket. And God forbid, that I have to come out of myself today. But that's what we're here to accomplish. That's the point. But it's like that. It's just, can I just lay here a little bit longer? Can I stay in my stupor a little bit longer? I don't want to have to acknowledge there's other people and other lives, out there who have feelings and things that are going on, to connect outside of something. Sometimes it's too overwhelming. And the services provoke that. They're set up to provoke that. It's really easy to just go to a 10,000 person church, go sit in your same seat that you've sat at every single week and be surrounded by 10,000 people, feel good that you went to church and know nobody. And go home and just fit right back into your same blanket, stuck in yourself life and just get angry at anything that would provoke you to step outside yourself. But that's what it's meant to do. You know, like walk around and pace during worship forces you outside of yourself. To have to give a comment forces you outside of yourself. To say what you had for dinner. And everybody's sharing what they had for, it's like, I don't want to share. I just want to sit here. I just want to show up. I just want to listen, and I want to go home, and I want to watch my TV show. It forces us to pop outside of ourselves. That's the point. So go ahead.
Yeah, and the other thing that I have experienced is like many times that is teaching, or that is like in many times in the seminars, and the teachings are like really long, and I started getting tired, and I started drifting and going and to La La Land, and he's talking, and I know now myself, if I just put attention to what he's saying and just trying to comment and trying to interact, like it's a switch, like right away.
Right away.
Like I'm totally like awake and I'm totally listening, and it's not then, oh, I'm special. It's I notice, and when I put the effort to be part of it, it's just like a totally switch. I can be like totally dead and wishing I want to go home, but in the moment that I switch, it totally switch, and I know that for fact, and I'm not saying
You're being decisive,
yeah,
deliberate, and dynamic.
and like you said,
You're not just like letting it set you back. It's like, okay, I got to do something about this. So take action.
yeah. And the sad thing is like knowing that many times I just let it go and I don't do anything about it. But I know that it's my own fault, and I know that now I know, well, if I push it a little more, like yeah, it's really bad what I'm feeling. But if I push it a little more, and if I try to connect, and I try to put attention, and I try to like be one with the teaching, whoever is teaching, if it's that, it's you, or whoever is teaching, is I can break through that barrier, and I can feel part of the what is going on.
Yeah.
I remember one last thing. Then you were talking is growing up. My favorite teacher was a history teacher. And now I understand why. She was a person, and she will make you be part of the class. She will not say like, okay, who study, whoever wants to talk. It's just, and we all were embarrassed to show the class, and we don't know what she is talking about. And she will ask you very like concise questions, and it makes the class like really fun. And it was my best class until now. It's my best memories going to high school, but it was because everybody was pulled outside of themselves to being part of like what that person was teaching, and is what we trying to do in those
Right.
in our ministry too.
Yeah. Good. Anyone else? Derek, you raised your hand.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually prayed beforehand that God would just speak with conviction through you. It's a nice message, and definitely it was
Thank you.
a convicting message for me personally.
Sometimes I don't have a message because nobody prays that prayer.
But yeah, for me personally, because I do struggle in this department of not being able to focus and having a hard time engaging, and I'm constantly falling asleep and just not knowing what happened, if I was even there. And it wasn't until you actually brought up the example of how they call on people to share the story until they get it, and it brought back the trauma from school, not knowing when the teacher's gonna call on you, hoping not
Yeah.
getting called up in front of the class, and
Yeah.
it brought all that heartbeat racing and butterflies, and
Yeah.
was enough to at least keep me awake now. And I think it was a good thing for me, because I do want to get to that point where I'm making more of a purpose to get something out of what we're teaching, because these are incredible teachings that we're hearing and not everyone gets to hear.
Yeah.
And for me to just take it for granted and just fall asleep, then it's not who I want to be anymore. And I think it finally sparked something inside of me that kind of pulled away that deaf and dumbness or that slumber that I would like to go home and actually start engaging and
Hmm.
applying what I'm learning here. And
Yeah. And it's like it makes you feel alive
yeah,
then when you do that. And the thing is there's so much that you do, like week in and week out, to engage with the Lord. You know, and I just say that because I think it's important to see, like, there's mechanisms that you have in place. I know there's things you do every week on a daily basis that keep you accountable to engage, you know, with God. And those are tools. Those are things that you do, whether it's making a phone call or, you know, going to serve or, you know, whatever. Like, those are tools that put us in a position to engage. And I think it's good to see that, and those are things that are really effective. You know, and we can like accelerate our growth by applying that and using all the tools. You know, so there's ways where, you know, maybe like in this, when it comes to services specifically, that maybe that's a weaker spot for you. But there's other things you do that you compensate for that really help you grow spiritually, which you are. You know what I'm saying? And then there's other of us where maybe we're really strong. You know, we're very engaging when we're as a group, but we're not doing things at home that keep us engaged. You know, or putting different mechanisms in place. So there's a system that we have. And if we see it that way, and that it isn't just a routine, it's not just something that we do, it's a very comprehensive system that God has given us to help us be in union with Him, if we take advantage of it. And we might not be using all the tools given. In some areas you might be really strong, in some areas not so much. And it's going to be different for every person, you know, but that's why we have different tools, different mechanisms that help us get there, and that's okay, you know, but we could still serve to like work on the areas we're weak on too. But I just want to highlight that because you're certainly growing, and there are areas you're really going above and beyond using the tools. But that doesn't mean this isn't an area that you can't grow more.
Yeah.
So that's good. Anyone else? Go ahead, Lauren.
Okay, I remember a lot of times when I was watching the kids that I would have that experience where, like, my own personal feelings or things that I was worried or upset about were, like, consuming me and just, like, in the forefront of my mind. And
Keeps you from focusing on...
yeah, and then God used a lot of the experiences with the kids, because when you're watching a bunch of kids and you're not like fully there and not fully like
making sure they don't fall, making sure they don't grab something they're not supposed to, like stuff will just go wrong left and right. And at that point, it's like undeniable. Like, okay, I'm just really not here right now. Like I'm a million miles away. I'm concerned about like something someone said 5 hours ago or something that I really want or something like that, and I'm not here with these kids, and all these terrible things are happening. And a lot of times I would want to get like really like frustrated or like why is everything going wrong? And it's like, well, because I'm not here. It's like I'm not getting outside myself. I'm not like getting rid of all this stupid stuff and focusing like, oh my gosh, these kids, like, they're looking up to me. Like, they need my help. Like, they need to be
Their
connected.
safety.
Yeah, their safety. And I don't like, do I want to be that I'm just like not even here? Like, I'm here. Like, I want to be with them. I want to connect with them, and just the experience of connecting with them, or just doing something that they would like instead of something that I would like, or something, or just thinking of different ways to like be with them and find out things about them, or just support them. It's just like, then it's not me. And that was one of the most like, and still is one of the most like effective tools when things are really bad, or there's a lot of like bad spiritual garbage or something like that. It's just like, okay, but if you just drop it all and just like, okay, there's a person here in front of me that needs like something, that God is here like in me to give something to this person right now. And if I could just tap into him, and what does he want me to do right now? What does he want me to give them? And sometimes it's like, I just really don't even know. And it's like, I'm like, God, where are you? What do you want me to do right now? But then
If you do something dynamic,
yeah,
to just decide, I don't want to be a person who's just stuck in my feelings and
yeah,
lost inside of myself, well, then you'll come out of it.
mm-hmm. So I think the experience of just, I like what you said about like, there's a person here in front of me. This person has feelings. This person, like, we just so like objectify people in our sin nature. Like, we just like, it's so easy to just be like, what is this person doing for me? What is God doing for me? Like,
Right.
And it's like, is that really why I'm here on this earth? To just, what is everything doing for me?
Yeah, and the point is, we're here to come out of ourselves. That's what we need to be to each other,
Yeah,
and
he
use our time together to accomplish that.
It's like, he already did everything for me. So how can I do something and be something for him, you know?
Yeah.
So it's just a whole change of thinking, I guess.
Yeah.
that-
Anyone else?
yeah.
Dana?
I've always appreciated the way Phil has done the Sunday messages, and that we do that because it really is that time of, because we haven't seen them, we haven't connected with them all week,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in prayer or something like that, or we watching them on the messages. But I think it's usually that time. It's kind of that, you know, you've had a lot going on that day, and it's, you know, and he knows that. And he's just like, again, it's his method of just like getting the bus around the curve until everybody gets on.
Yeah.
But it really is a good way, I think, of just connecting first, and then once you connect, then okay, now
Right.
let's start a message.
Yeah.
I'm not just somebody way over here. By the time it's all done, we're all in the same room, even though we're not in the same room. And
Yeah, there's real rhyme and reason. It's not
right,
disorganization.
he doesn't do it
It's
just
not,
to,
yeah.
You know, he does it for specific reasons, because it really is. There is a spiritual kind of a connection that happens, and then he knows. You can tell there's sometimes he's like, and he keeps going and keeps going, and then finally it's like, okay, now I'm there. And he feels like everybody's in that place, and then he starts the message. So I think it's neat that we do that. I think other people that get in go, what? You know, I don't know how you do that with a huge group, but I'm sure he'd find some way of doing it.
Yeah.
And the other thing I thought was important when you said there's an incredible power in confession. Because confession just kind of, you hear that when, like when there's a love feast and somebody confesses something deep, it breaks all the walls down, and it breaks down a barrier, and there's like a quietness that comes over everybody. And then I think it's like all of a sudden become more real.
Yeah.
After that, after a good strong confession or something that happens, or a real strong testimony, everything kind of comes out of that. Like I said, it spurs on things in everybody else's heart. That's like, oh gosh, I can relate to that.
Yeah.
And then they're less apt to just sit there. And
Yeah.
will
We all start looking at ourselves.
Right, definitely.
Reminders, that's why we're here.
Right.
Yeah. Anyone else? Any other engagement? Sylvia?
I have to confess, I was having a hard time engaging today. I don't normally fall like asleep, but if there was something that was really wanting me to like fall asleep on this, and I'm like, what's going on, you know? And I did hear a lot of the message, but there were parts where when I was trying to write, I couldn't write what you were saying. And it was hard for me to, at the end there, to concentrate. So I think this was good, and I'm looking forward to listening to it again.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad you have it up. So
See, but that alone, you got something out of it then.
yeah.
No, but seriously, like that's like we just have to be honest with ourselves and say, wow, you know what, I had a hard time engaging, so let me make sure that's on my radar so that I can make sure I just keep pushing through and don't let something come in, or, you know, maybe it's just because I'm not feeling good, but maybe there's something spiritually going on, and let me look at that a little bit and then do something about it. You know, use the tools that we have to keep, you know, breaking through. But then one way or another, it's like we still get something out of it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm glad I said something. So.
yeah. Okay, unless there's any other comments in closing prayer. Lord, you've given us a spirit of peace, quietness, a sound mind, self-controlled. Lord, we're so grateful for your spirit, for what you've done for us, and we want to make the reach. We want to engage with you. Find a way to connect and keep growing. Keep taking the life lessons that you're giving us and applying them so we could be closer to you. We could separate ourselves more from our sin nature and connect ourselves more to your spirit. And I just pray that you would continue to create circumstances and just lead us as a group to just make this an effective place for people to accomplish that. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.